learners, we are about to begin the session. First, I'd like to seek your cooperation in completing this seminar. Kindly mute your audio and video to avoid interruption. You'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenter by typing your questions in the chat box. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collect the same and address them at the end of the presentation. It is my pleasure to be a moderator for this seminar. I'm Architect Subhashri Vaidyanathan on behalf of AAAD. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to one and all present here. We appreciate you taking time from your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you learn a lot today. Before we begin the session formally, there's a small video that we would like to play. Now, I request Architect Siddharth sir to play the video. Thank you, Siddharth sir. Before the presentation begins, a small introduction about the presenter. Architect William is the founder and creative head of Arcom Studios, which is a cross-disciplinary initiative that focuses on design, research, and architectural education. He completed his graduation from the School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, and since then he has worked in Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu. He is currently working in the field of architectural conservation under the guidance of Professor Dr. Kailash Rao and Professor Nalini Thakur for his post-graduation thesis project in the historic Sangam Tamilagam region. He believes in using the root of his historic materials, techniques, documentation, and study tools, and the understanding of people, place, time to build a justified path towards a sustainable future. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the presenter to deliver the presentation. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Architect Subhashri. So first, I would like to thank AAAD team for having me back here. It is my pleasure to be back here now. So we'll start with the presentation now. So before we start, we have always known or been relevant with the idea of understanding a human settlement. We do this every time and all the time, in all the fields. Let it be a basic site analysis or a basic settlement study or urban design, it has many venues. But we always tend to focus on what is there at this point of time, what is there right now, and what we see visually. So what I am trying to show over here is will be an introduction to understand how a settlement can be read. A settlement or a civilization is something like a book, which can be read if you know how to read the language of it. And language I'm saying here is people, place, and time. The flow of the presentation will be the first part we'll talk about why we are doing it, what are we actually trying to do, and how we are going to approach it. And this will be condensed and will be understood with a case example of Badami, which is in Bangalore district. And to be in geographical terms, it's in Malaprabha Valley. So yes, the first overall understanding of what, why, and how. First, when we look at human settlements, the overall holistic understanding is what actually gives meaning to something. As you can see in the right side, you have a single dot. That dot represents a village. And that village will be seen in isolation unless we try to understand its overall connection, its overall pattern, its overall growth. So with respect to that, we will be looking at it in terms of the three factors which we told. We cannot directly start placing, okay, place is somewhere in Bagalkot, Badami. No. Time is like 2021, and it's not like that. We need a sequence. We need an organizational pattern. And this is what actually gives meaning. It is like when we start reading the English language, without knowing ABCD, we cannot read what is there. Or I cannot read Tamil or Kannada and then try to use that in reading an English book, right? So that is how it works. To learn a settlement, to read a settlement, we need to understand the language of settlements. So the first part is the place. The first thing that is the most vital part in a settlement is the overall geography, the setting. If you have seen, even there are examples in movies too, like Mohenjo-daro movie, if you have seen, you can see the settlement is always revolving around the water body. Humans have this tendency of natural resources affiliation, and we tend towards geography is good, we'll move towards it. Even for vacation, we move towards it. Even for lifestyle, we move towards it. So geography is the first base which we need, and that creates the place factor. And the next part is events and its sequence. Here, we should not just take landmark events. We should not say okay, 1947, we got independence. 1950, we got the constitution done. It's not just that. It is about how it happened and when it happened and what was the mindset of the people when it happened. So time should be taken with a pinch of salt, taking the considerations of not just blank time. It should be sequence. It should be one, it not be 4, 5. You get it right. You cannot start up and conclude in a sequence. You should start from the origin to the end. And the last part, but not the least, is the people factor. People, as you know, we humans have our own tendency of molding places, making it our own, trying to make it into something which we'll understand easily. So that is how it works. So how do we actually express? We are a creature of the society. We have things which we have to govern. Like for example, there will be a set of people who have a certain lineage, who have a certain set of cultures, who have a certain set of belief, and that is how their whole settlement pattern will overall change. Now, when you look at this particular village B, now there was a village A. Now we have another village which has come now. So these two are now two different dots. Now, when we further look into it, now humans have come in after a certain period of time, and it is now growing into a bigger part. Now we have a third factor. There is a port over here. As I told, humans need resources. Humans need the geography to survive. So the first village and the second village, they will try to run towards the port city. They will try to go towards it for multiple benefits like trading or just for recreation. Trying to move towards the port city. And the last part will be they have now become one whole entity. There is no village A, there is no village B, there is just city AB. So this is what is happening right now. If you take the example of Bangalore, which where you are in right now, there are multiple cores of Bangalore. If you ask which is the core of central Bangalore to someone who was born in 1980s, they will talk about like Malleshwaram is very outside. Yalanka is nowhere near. That is how people talk. But now currently, when you look at Bangalore, Yalanka is an integral part of it. Now the next goal is Devanagari. That is very far away. So even after some 10 years, Devanagari will again get connected after this metro. So that is how we actually perceive a place. Now, if you look at just Bangalore, you will be like, okay, it's a very big city. It has many roads. It is connecting and all. Now, take the place factor. You can see Bangalore has a core. It has its own natural elements which actually drive its growth. People come there for its resources. People come there for its climate. People come there for. So within these three elements itself, we got people, time, and place. So this is how it is going to work overall, and this is what will guide our overall studies in this part. Now we will go into the case of Badami. I hope people are relevant with the place of Badami. It is a small city, not very small right now. It was small before in Badalkot district, and it is a very good example of a city which I see in terms of its growth sequentially. And why I'm saying it is a very good example is because it's very less disturbed. As we see, Bangalore is losing its core essence of the overall pattern. Where is Bangalore now? Where is the core now? Where does it start? Where does it end? You need jurisdiction boundaries to define it. But here in ancient times, it was geography and the people that defined it. So when you look at this particular map over here, if you see this small part which is written as BDMM, this region is Badami. But when you look at it in the overall bigger region, the first place factor, we have Malaprabha River. And that is what is creating the habitat for the system. And factor when we move into it, the hilly features. These hills provided a lot of accommodation people. When now here time will come into picture. You will say that, sir, now we are not living in caves. We can build our own houses. We can build our own apartments. We can stay there. But now look at it in terms of proto-history or prehistory. Those were the times when people moved towards caves, natural caves, where they could actually go and survive. And they needed water, they needed shelter, and the next was food. And this valley was a thriving area for hunting over here. So that is how civilization actually began. And that is how the overall civilization got developed. Now, you know Badami. You we see them as individual monuments, we see them as individual heritage sites, but if you see the overall pattern of it, all these three are a part of a single natural geographical element, that is the Malaprabha Valley. This Malaprabha Valley is catering the overall whole region over here, and these three are always connected and not in isolation. Now here we will try to look at the details of it. Now I have been talking everything in the air of philosophy and things like how does it work, how do you see it. Now how can I read it on site? How will it help me for my particular course over here? So if you can see the map in the, you can see over here the overall region, this part. This is the water tank which is catering to the smaller Badami. We saw Malaprabha Valley and the Malaprabha River catering the overall region. Now the same logic. Now we are going into smaller Badami. We have a small water body here. This is Agastya Lake. And then we have a small settlement over here. We have another, not small. It was small. It is supposed to be contained, but it has become now like this. So these are the two settlements over here. Now, one thing we have to consider in this, we missed one element, that is culture. Why did the settlement grow? Why did this settlement come into this picture? First of all, it was not just the lake. If you see in this part, there is the Bhutnatha complex, temple complex. If you see over here, you will find Malagatti Shivalaya, you will find Upper Shivalaya, Lower Shivalaya. All these which I am showing right now, these are the elements which act as cores or magnets. These are the things which make people to grow. Like for a plant, you need water for it to grow, right? For a settlement, you need culture for it to grow. Without culture, there won't be any growth. And that is how people actually, specifically Indians, we Indians actually produce settlements through our culture. It is not like I'm going to plan a big township or something and I'll make a residential township or something like that. We never had this ideology of just creating a township or creating a big factory area or things like that. Every location, every place started with a belief system. Every place, wherever you go, irrespective of the belief system, every place will have its core. If you see in this image over here, you can see a temple here. You can see one here. There's one here. One more. Here you can see a whole museum, which has a lot of elements from the temple over here. And here it's the complete water body, right? And there again, here's a small mosque area. If you go further in, I'll be showing in the later photos. You can see it much clearer than that. So see, there are so many different focus areas. And with respect to these focus areas, you can see this settlement is growing around this temple. This area is growing around the mosque. Here from the top of the hill, it is like there is a small tap. That tap is the source. And from the tap is a flow of settlements coming over here. And these upper and lower Shivalayas, they create the prominent identity for the region over here. So this is how it works. This is how Indian settlements specifically work. Now let's look at it in a much closer scale. I was saying like there are settlements here, there are people here and things like that. But how does it help? How do people actually make use of it? As you know, it's a very dry, hot area. And during the summers, it gets very unbearable for people who don't know how to survive there. And if you actually notice one thing, you can see there are multiple types of houses. These are all modern concrete, cement, brick houses. These are the traditional Badami houses. These type of houses you can even see in Devanalli Fort. It is a common typology which is followed in hot and dry climates of Karnataka. And similarly, you can see there is a natural feature over here, and the settlement is now currently overpowering it. But can you see the scale of this structure? So I will tell you a few things which we are forgetting because of our loss of understanding of settlements. Earlier times, if you look at the overall way how it was configured, there's a core, there's a connectivity going to the settlement, and there are these traditional houses. These traditional houses, they have their materials which have been tried and tested over time, and they prove that they don't need any air conditioning, or they don't even need any fan or external features to have natural cooling inside. And they never had tall structures. They had only short structures because these structures need regular maintenance. And these are not the polythene bag kind of structures which we have made of cement. I'm not judging them, I'm not commenting on them, but it is not right for that specific region. So that is what we need to understand there. Every place, time, people, whichever factor we take, has to vary, has to be dynamic, and has to correlate with that particular place. The studying me will not be if I'm going to Bangalore. When I was talking about Bangalore, I spoke about climate. I spoke about lakes. You know, lakes, disappearing lakes is a very big issue in Bangalore right now. There is a lot of there are flooding which is happening in some places, and there is no water in some places. These kind of imbalances happen because of our play, our random play with natural elements. And if you see over here, there is a big rock. It was supposed to be surrounded by smaller houses. And during the period of the Mughals, they had their defense systems. And those defense systems use these natural elements also as a way of defense. And if you look at this photo, Bhutnatha complex over here, if you have ever been to this place or if you are planning to go to this place, you must definitely look at not just the temple, everything around it too. Wherever you go, you can see how those people, the ancient people, more intelligent. They did not just make structures; they made structures out of nature. You can see these small black lines which are coming from here. Have you seen the sides of your apartments or houses after it rains for continuously 1 month? There will be some moss formation, algae formation. This is that. This is the sediments after so many years of water flowing in this area. It is so beautiful when you look at this place when there are heavy rains, like water will be flowing from top over here. You go waterfalls in so many different places and all, right? But this is meant to feed this lake. So the part is connected to the lake. And whatever water comes to this over here is connected to the lake. If you go this side, there is again a connection to the lake. So what do you see here? Everything which is built over here is supposed to cater to the natural element, is supposed to cater to the geographical element. So that is how things work. And you can see people over here. People are making use of this particular water body. This is one of the uses which they have. So it is like give and take. You feed nature and nature feeds you. That is how it works. And that is how you understand the connection between the people who are living there, their way of life, and the natural elements which are present over there. Now, if you can see the video on the left, just pause and show you. If you look at this particular small street over here, you can easily find out what are the issues that we are currently making. Can you see this part? This part is a way to navigate water which is overflowing on top. You can see there are small openings, no big doors, no big windows. And this is what we do. We create these cement, non-breathable paving. Now what they have done to make an alteration to it, you can see this line. This is a small crack thing which they have made or which has come over time for water to flow to this small system over here. And this whole area leads to a big natural element. This is how we are. We are supposed to not just look at things, but we are supposed to understand them and then work around them and then make use of them. Now, after this, I'm hoping like we can now read settlements directly. Now we know how settlements are governed, how people actually think, how people actually grow, how people actually connect with the surroundings, right? So this image is something which I found very interesting, and it was a big struggle to get this overall picture. So why it is so? Because you can see over here. I'll show a few stuff. See, check out all the cores: man-made cave, man-made, semi-natural, and man-made. This is also man-made. Now, what is happening over here? These are places where it is 50%, no, 50% of geography's work, 50% of human work. So there is already a big structure, that is a big overall hill over here. And over that hill, there are small areas. It is like if you see, you have an old wooden furniture, right? You can see termites. Treat humans like termites. Okay, now think that humans are termites. Imagine those termites going around and searching for a place. If you have a small wooden block, those termites will first go. They'll make a small patch over here. They'll go inside and they'll live there. If you don't have anything like this, then they will take some sand, make a big termite pit, and then live there. This is primitive humans. We did this first. When there is a big chunk of rock which is present, we started going into it and making it into habitable places. The first core of our culture is to create belief system places. So these were made. And after that, we were like, okay, now there is a big open space here. How do I make up my own house? So I took the material which is around me, that is the stone, the mud, and everything, and made my own set of houses. And after I made my houses, this connection from this core to here is missing. So I started making independent cores. So all these are independent cores which were made away from the overall idea of using an already existing structure. And after making that, now next term is to make it more connected to what I feel. So if you start from where majorly shades. So their way of construction was totally different because that was early Badami Chalukya construction. And that was a mixture of Dravidian and Nagara overall altogether. So you can see this particular temple over here, Lower Shivalaya. This belongs to early Chalukya. And next is, after some more period of time, as we do, the first I was writing like a small scribble and things, and now detailed sketching will start, and then that will change into a painting. So that is self-growth, right? So similarly here, the overall settlement has its own self-growth. People start making simple structures, and then they learned from it and executed them as a very complex structure. And then people of different belief systems came in. They wanted something of their own. Like if, for example, if I go to some place, when I was staying in Bangalore, I came to Bangalore and I had something which was relevant to me. It was something which was I will keeping a small calendar which I can read in my language. So that is something of a local connection. Even in current economic times also, imagine Tesla coming to India. Tesla will not be a US company in India. They have to make a base in Bangalore. They have to become Indian. Then they will be accepted. That is how we work. So that's how our ancient people also worked. So coexisting multiple belief systems came into picture. And there were smaller shrines also built over here. And there were integrated shrines also built over here. Now, what is happening? We have now multiple cores, and there are multiple people and multiple communities there too. We never know how to build settlements. We will not know what made this place to grow. we will be like, okay, there is Badami, there is a settlement. I can even say now, if you go in Google and type Badami and search it, the settlement which I showed you, it will be written as Badami slum area. Can you believe that? Like, it is written as Badami slum area, and that is the core of the city. Just because we treat these old kacha houses, why, what is this word which we are using? Those are the actual houses which have so much meaning. They don't need AC, they don't need any extra system to function. They just need people living there. And we are calling them kacha houses and we are calling them as slums. That is because of our lack of understanding of how to read settlements. Now this is an even more zoomed in image over here. Can you see this small part? This is a remain of a fortification over there. Now from the previous image, if I had just left like, okay, there are some belief systems, there are some integrated cores, that's it done. No. Now next I have to see what happened in sequence. So which sequence, if I see over here, there is this Jambukeshwara and Mallikarjuna temple complex here. If you see this, there is a small fortification over there. And both have their own different set of people. Both have their own different set of beliefs which are being followed. And both have their own significance. So here it will tell you the belief system core gave rise to the settlement. The defense gave rise to political dominance. So there are two elements coming from just by reading the settlement. So if you understand how to clearly read a settlement, you don't even have to go into things like this, which are non-reliable sources, and try to read like, what is Badami, what is there. No, just have a look at the image. A place, when you go for a site study, a case study, this is what you do. You go to a case study, you understand the place, you read the place, you document the place, and that is how it works. The culture and belief and integration and evolution can be clearly seen over here. So yes, this is what I'm trying to overall conclude over here or convey over here, is that now this was an overall explanation. This will be an overview of what we are overall doing over here. Geographic core, associated belief cores. Yeah, you can see over here, it is written Badami slums. See, this is the sad reality. So we have Badami's natural elements, the hill which is providing safety, and then the cores, and then the settlement. Now, without even having to look at any other view, yeah. So without even having to look into more detail of, or more of it, or the aspects of it, which we have to do after this. First is understand this, learn to read it, and then you look into it. So just need a Google Earth photo to understand a settlement, and then need an on-site to read it, and then you need your own critical thinking to categorize it. You remember the flowchart which I showed in the starting. What is place? Place over here is Malaprabha Valley and Badami. It was early Chalukyas and multiple powers which came into this region. And what is the people over here? People is their culture, their belief system, their area over here, their way of living over here. So this is what we are supposed to do. And I'll show you some live examples of projects which has been done using these overall ideology. We saw only this is the overall broader study of the history of that region. This is done in even more detail. I have made it into a very simple form that can be easily understood. So just to study one house in Badami, we need that overall here. Then we need to come into Malaprabha Valley. Then we need to come into Badami. Then you come into that house. So house is not independent. It is connected to the overall world which is around it. So this is a very practical on-ground approach to it. If you, I think you have been to Mahakota. Mahakota is 1 kilometer away from Badami. So if you see over here, currently if you see, it is like the overall settlement which is present is laid out in this area, right? Yeah. So in this, if you see, you can see like multiple temples. There are so many temples. We just see them as temples. That's it. But if you start understanding like what was the people's belief system, what is the geography of that area, what type of stone are they using, and that stone is directly connected to the geography. As I told, water was a very big issue here. So the central Kund area is connected to a bigger water body. There is a small lake tank over here, and there is a back connection which is going. So this is how you need to see. Now, if you see the individual structures, individual elements and their progression, that will give you the overall date part of it. When it came, how it came and why it came. And when you understand that, that will give you the proper site analysis of any broader level of study. This is for a contextual study, a urban level of study, or a settlement level of study. This can be used for microstructures, but it is more meaningful for broader places. Now, this is an example to show for micro level of structures. So if you see over here, I have shaded a few places in these structures. Right? It is like this is done by the temple management over there. There are temples which are made in the early Chalukya period, and people didn't know that it was made in early Chalukya period, and they have connected it to a new modern construction. This might look colonial, but it was made after colonial. This we got to know after reading the material part of it. So once you see this, you will understand, okay, this came first, this came second, and these two are not compatible because they didn't know how to read it. So what do we have to do now? Give space for both of them. They need to coexist. So it has to be modified in terms of that. Now here again, if you see, same. There are these constructions. If you like, I'll tell you what are the uses of it. This place is used for cooking food. This place is used for storage, and this they have just made a big platform around it, and that place is used for residential. I mean, residence of the people who are working there. So what good does it do when you're trying to protect the place and then you ruin it to build some more additive features? It is like I broke my hand, so I'll break this hand and use that as a junction to connect it. It makes no sense. So that is how it is. It is you need to understand a place in its essence, in its core, and that will give rise to an overall understanding of it. So I would like to conclude this in a crisp way so that it doesn't complicate it more, because this might be like more of a philosophical ideological thing which I'm saying, but when you start comparing it with your current site which you're working on in your studio, it will give you a much more meaningful understanding of how do you understand your past to navigate your future. That is what I'm trying to say over here. So reading the past with sound techniques and analyzing them with clarity, sympathy. We should not be like, oh, those people did not know anything. Those people did not have the technology. No, they had mind. They had their thought process. They knew that they can also build a big plot and make many houses, but they didn't make it because they also knew they need the green space for breathing. And what we are doing, we are removing those plants and everything, and we are saying, I'll put AC inside my house. So that is how our thought process is changing. So we must analyze them with clarity and sympathy towards period and paradigm. Paradigm talks about the overall setting of the place. Like at that place, there were no cars. Had only bullock carts. So they had narrow roads. So logic like that. So the setting of that area needs to be understood. This will make us to have a comprehensive and holistic understanding of a region. So in short, this is the overall idea of place, time, and people being the key to understanding human settlements. So this was the overall gist or an introduction to the overall idea of it. So if there are any questions in any part of it, or if you need any clarity in any part of it, I'm open to it. Architect Shubhasri?
Uh, just a second, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you showed us some images on the on the mountains, no, sir. Was there any fort on it, sir? Like the question is actually, was there a
Yes,
fort
yes,
on top of the rock mountain?
yes, yes. If you see this hill feature over here, you can see there is a fortification which was built. I didn't talk about it because this will take us to an overall different idea of defense architecture, and that will again create a world of study. I'll show you why they made this. If you see this overall plan, the main reason why Badami was chosen for settling is this has this U shape. This U shape gives overall protection. Imagine an old settlement where it can be attacked from any side. You will need to make a place where you can focus or focus your attack front, right? If you take the point of India, why we are making peace with Pakistan, that is because we cannot fight with China and Pakistan at the same time. It is a two different front. So two whole area of attack which is coming in. Same logic here. Badami has three closed spaces. So it has naturally defended three regions, which they have further fortified using the fort over here. This is the southern hill fort, and you can have fortification of the northern hill over here. And there are smaller remains of the fortification inside also, if you go into the settlement. So the overall reason of having that fortification was to create a defense from the growing political powers around it. So that is why the fort is built over there.
That was the only question, sir.
Yeah. So if anyone else has any questions with respect to their own specific topic, where they are working, how to read it, then I would suggest just take any example. If you are in Bangalore, try to read your smaller region. If you are in Yelahanka, try to read Yelahanka in terms of how did it grow, why did it grow. It has that meaning. So every place has its meaning derived from its core identity of people, place, and time.
Thank you for the informative and interesting talk, sir. Finally, we have come to the end part of our presentation. I'd like to thank Architect Siddharth sir and Architect Kishan sir for the webinar, as they are the webinar coordinators, and Architect Hashita ma'am for the broadcasting coordinator. Thank you, Architect Ganesh sir, for introducing us to the various speakers around the globe and giving us the exposure. A special mention to the Aditya group of institutions for always being kind and generous in accepting our request. Hopefully, the presentation will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to thank all the participants. It is an honor to be a moderator for today's webinar. Thank you.